Hey everybody, welcome to the video. We're going to be using ripe persimmon and mustard seed to start our card base for this card. We're using the Iceberg card kit from the Airbender bundle. It is one of the add-ons, so I'm just using ripe persimmon up near the top, and then I'm going over mustard seed over the very top of my card, and just blending those two in together just to create kind of like a sunset or sunrise appearance that's going to be behind our iceberg. And I'm going to be using Salty Ocean right at the very bottom of my card, of the card base here. And I don't need to go all the way in because we're going to be covering it up with chipboard elements. So I'm going to take my white piece of cardstock and I'm using Salty Ocean first, and I'm going to color the entire base with one solid color. And I decided on the Distress inks, the Oxide inks, just because I really liked how they looked, and I thought it would give us some cool texture if we use some spray on them as well, just to get that distressed look. So I took a little bit of spray here, and then I set them aside to dry. So next up is our highlight kind of piece, and all I did was stick it down, and then we're using that broken china, and I'm covering this whole piece with broken china. So I chose kind of 4 different blues here just to get some different effects in our iceberg, and you'll see that once we get the card together in the end. And again, we're going to spray this down with some water as well and set it aside to dry. Next up, we're taking our smaller little piece and we're using Stormy Sky, and we're going to ink that all up. I love using Distress Oxides. I think they're just so fun. And I love always seeing what will happen when you spray them with water and what they look like. So next piece off to dry, and then another little light piece. I'm using Tumbled Glass for this one. And we're just going to get it all in there. And we're going to spray that, and then we're going to let that dry up together. So now we're going to work on our Sokka. So on Sokka, I'm using our skin tone. So I'm using Copic for the skin tones. So I'm using E04, E11, E21, E00, and E000, and R20 for the cheeks. So I just went in and I'm starting with my darker skin tone first around the edges, and then I go in next with my E11 and I go a little further, and you can see here I'm putting a little bit on the eyebrows, a little bit in the tip of the nose, and I did the ears. And then we're also going to go in further down the forehead as well. Then we just take our next lighter color in line, which is our E21, and I'm just going to continue blending that skin around, going around the cheeks and the chin, in through the forehead again, in through the eyebrows, and then bringing it lower down through the face and a little bit more around the eyes and around the eyelid and around the mouth and into the cheek area. Then with our E00, our skin white, I'm just continuing to blend that skin tone all the way around. And finally our E000, starting in the middle and then blending it out and trying to just soften everything up with that E000 a little bit. And then I'm also going into the hands and the neck area as well. Just making sure I get everything nice and blended. And then in the tongue, I use E04 on either side, R20 in the middle, and then just blend it out in between. And then for the cheeks, I like to do little hills with our R20, and then I blend it out usually with E00 or E000 just to soften those cheeks. So I'm going back in a little bit with my E11 and just deepening some of the skin tone a little bit more. Depending on how you like to do it, sometimes I like to add a second coat to my skin tone, so that is what I am doing here now. As you can see, I like to blend, especially on my second go around. So for the rest, I am using Ohuhu Markers. So for the eyes, I'm using B070, B050, and B030. I'm starting with the B070 at the very bottom. In the middle, I put my B050, and then at the very top, I use my B030, and just kind of blend it all from lightest to dark. So I start with my dark going up to my midtones, and then I'm using white gel pen here just to highlight the eyes. The hair, I'm using E400 and E380 in the sides. And then the top and the little ponytail, I'm adding in my E310. You can see I'm just adding some little dots in here just to give it a little bit of texture, just so he's got like little short sides. And then I blend it out with my marker as well and just go over it just to give it a little bit of softness. So I use my darkest color to add the little flicks, and I'm just doing it in from the flicks of the points and then above the hairband, and then around the hairline, I'm just kind of flicking in. And then I go down from the top as well, just kind of squiggling it in there. And I've decided to add a little bit more depth into the sides as well. And then I just go in again and I start filling it in on either side, just using those flicking motion. And then my lightest color ends up in the very middle. And you can see here, if I go outside the lines, I use my 0, my colorless blender, and I remove it. And going back in with my E400, or my 310 rather, and just adding in a little bit more depth in there into the hair. So next will be his top, and his top is B290, B260, and B250. And I'm starting with my darkest color first, and I'm putting it in where I want the shadowed areas, like underneath his sleeves and the bottom of his like top or his tunic, I guess you could say, a little bit shadowed under his belt and on to the right hand side of his clothes. And then I move on to my B260, and then I add that slightly out from where that darker was. So I'm just building it up darker to lighter, and my B250 is that last color that I'm just putting in there. And depending on how everything blends, you want to add a little bit more depth to it. So here you can see I'm going over with my B290 again, just adding a little bit more depth. I just wanted it a little bit darker. And then again, just going through those markers, the 260 and the 250, just to make sure everything really blends really nice and I've got a really nice deep color in that shirt. And of course, any little spots, I just erase with my colorless blender. Colorless blender, the Zero and Copic or the Ohuhu, always got to have it nearby. I like to make sure my lines are as clean as I can get them. And I'm just kind of coloring in his little strap there. So now his arm wraps and his sash is going to be CG020 and CG200. And I'm just using my darkest color first and then blending it in with my lighter color. So nice and easy. There's not tons of space there, so you don't need to go too in-depth if you don't want to with your color choices. So next, his pants are BG205, BG203, and then MG020. So we are now into our MG020 here, which is our lighter color. So I'm just putting those right into his pants there, and then just using a little bit just to shade in his top. So now his boots are going to be BR1, BR2, and E220. And again, I'm starting with my darker color, and I'm just adding them in some places. And then we go to our BR2 and then our E220 at the end there. And then for the boomerang, we're using BG9 and BG3. Just two simple colors, just small area again, don't need to use a lot of tones. And there we go, he is all done. Next up, we're going to color up Momo. So Momo's fur is going to be done with E280, that's his main body fur. His face and his stripe is going to be E300. And then the lighter stripe, I'm going to be using E210. And then for his eyes, GY4 and GY7. So I'm just filling in all his body for right now with the E280. He's super quick to color. You just got to make sure that you use just the very, very tip of your marker because he is a small stamp. And I'm using that E300 for the dark. He's probably one of the easiest things you could color. And don't worry about the marker color, it's not too dark, it doesn't color up those stamped lines. And I went in his eyes a bit, so I'm going to use the 0 to get rid of that color. So that light stripe is at E210, and then I'm just adding it as a little bit of shadow around him too, and just giving some more depth in there in some of his fur areas. And then we're starting with the GY4 at the under part of his eye, and then at the top of his eye, we're using the GY7. And then we're going to put the card all together. So now we're going to build our card base, and we're just going to use our Stamp Anything glue, and we're going to put our glue base right down on our chipboard and attach our cardstock that we used to it. And we're just going to glue it all together, all three pieces, and then glue it onto our base. Nice and simple and easy. Maybe don't use quite as much glue as I did, but you can see here how it looks with that water, that distressed effect on it now. It looks super cute. So now I'm just going to glue together the small iceberg part. I really love this kit. It's probably the easiest one there is. But it works really well with the socket image, or you could use it for Katara as well. And then, so I'm just going to glue it to the base. I'm just lifting it up a little bit, so that's why we left that blue section down at the bottom. So the iceberg's kind of popping up from the ice a little bit. And then I'm just putting this second iceberg just a little bit lower. And now I'm just going to use some pop dots, and I'm going to put them all over Sokka, and I'm going to put them on Momo as well, because I think it would look super cute just to have more 3D effect, more texture in this card. And I'm trying to decide where to put him, and I'm going to put him on the left, and I'm going to put Momo kind of near the bottom of the iceberg here on the right hand side, so I've got some room for my sentiment to be stamped on at the top. And here we go. I love you, Momo, than you'll ever know card. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and see you next time.